So Sean Strickland's next fight was just officially announced to be taking place against Paulo Costa at the UFC 302 event as the co-main event. If you guys didn't know, the main event for that fight has already been announced and is going to be Islam Makhachev taking on Dustin Poirier, which I have made a video about already and have given my opinion on that fight, as well as the Conor McGregor fight that was also announced. So there's so many videos on my channel right now that I've just uploaded, and this is going to be another one. Straight out the gate, I think that Sean Strickland is going to be able to win this matchup, and I do think he does win this fight. My problem with Sean Strickland is I don't think his fight IQ is very good, though, in the fact that he only strikes, and even though he can wrestle, he doesn't do it. And I feel like Sean Strickland's wrestling, or lack of wrestling, is actually why he lost to Dricus du Plessis. Because in his just most recent fight, in a fight which a lot of people do think that he did beat Dricus du Plessis, and be honest, I thought Strickland has a very strong case to winning it, but I'm more so on the fence than anything. I think Strickland lost this fight because he didn't wrestle. I think if Strickland just shot a couple of takedowns in some of those closer rounds, he would have won, because that's what Dricus was doing. Some of the rounds were very close on the feet, and Dricus at the very end of the round would just shoot takedowns and get them and arguably steal the rounds. So Dricus du Plessis goes out there and he won the fight against Strickland. Strickland feels like he was robbed. He wants the rematch. The UFC obviously doesn't want to do the rematch because I think the UFC wants to do Israel Adesanya versus Dricus du Plessis in Perth, which is kind of hilarious considering Israel Adesanya has recently been complaining about how he was booed in Sydney, and I was at that event, and Israel Adesanya was booed. He wasn't really booed that much, though, in the arena of the event. He was booed a lot at the press conference, but he wasn't really booed that much in the actual event. So I find it a little bit interesting that he's kind of coming out with all of these allegations. There were actually a lot of cheers for Adesanya. There was a mix of everything, but for the most part, Adesanya was booed a lot at the press conference, but not really that much in the arena. In fact, I don't think he really was booed that much in the arena when the fight was like occurring and when it was going on. But anyway, the point is, obviously, Strickland's not going to get that rematch. We didn't defend the belt at the end of the day. He took on the first guy to fight him, had a decent performance against Dricus du Plessis, but ultimately I think he cost himself the fight by not going for takedowns. That's genuinely how I feel about that matchup. And now we go into Paulo Costa, and he's kind of a guy that's had an interesting case because he doesn't fight that often. I believe, was it in 2022 or 2023? I think it was after the Luke Rockhold fight. He announced that his girlfriend, who was also his manager, has managed to get him the biggest deal a Brazilian fighter has ever had. So if that's true, Paulo Costa is going to be getting paid a boatload of money. And he ended up getting paid a lot of money, I assume, and he fought Robert Whittaker, and he lost a fight to Robert Whittaker in a fight which mostly Robert Whittaker just looked really good on the feet and boxed him up. And in my opinion, I think that's kind of what's going to happen in this matchup against Sean Strickland. Out of the two fighters, the guy that's more serious in his career, I do think, is Strickland. Now, it is kind of a little bit ironic with some of the things that Strickland has said, because when Strickland was the champion after he beat Izzy, or even before that, he said, guys, I don't even want to be the champion. I just want to beat Adesanya. And then he goes out there and beats Izzy, and then he loses the belt to Dricus. All of a sudden, he wants the belt back. He wants the belt desperately. So maybe after actually losing the belt, he's kind of realized that it is something that he wants and something that he does want in his career. It's also worth noting there was some sort of contract dispute with the UFC, I guess you could say, for this one, because Strickland said that he was offered Costa on short notice, which is for this card, which isn't that short notice, but 6 weeks is pretty short notice, and Strickland said he was offered base contract and it was less than 200k to show, 200k to win, which is interesting. I'm assuming it was 150 for 150. And Strickland didn't want that. He didn't want none of that. So apparently he went back to the UFC. He publicly said this, by the way. This isn't just stuff that I've happened to run into. Strickland tweeted this. He said that he went to the UFC. They had a conversation. He told the UFC that he doesn't want to be rich. He just wants to have enough money that when he retires, he won't have to work again and he will be able to support a family. And apparently the UFC were very supportive of that, and he is going to be getting paid a bit extra, a bit more than that to fight Paulo Costa. So I'd assume a very common number that I do see floating around for a lot of fighters is 350. So I'm going to assume Strickland's getting 350 to show, and then he might have like a $150,000 incentive to win bonus. That's kind of what the money that I'm assuming. And then Paulo Costa is claiming that he's on like a 7-figure contract, which is kind of nuts. So maybe he's on like a 500k to show, 500k to win, but Costa's not worth that much, honestly. But hey, it is what it is. I mean, like, yeah, Costa, I mean, like, at the end of the day, he's an absolute troublemaker for the promotion. You know, we went in there against, where was it, Marvin Vettori, 205 pounds. He didn't want to make the weight, and then he's pulled out of a bunch of fights. A lot of fights haven't happened. I mean, to be fair, though, a lot of them aren't really Costa's fault because a lot of fights are getting announced, and Costa's saying, I didn't sign the contract, so he's not going to do the fight. So that happens a bit in the UFC sometimes, and to be fair to Costa, fair enough. If you haven't signed the contract, then why would you do the fight? But yeah, anyway. He loses to Whittaker. I think that Strickland versus Costa could look similar. You cannot trust Strickland to wrestle at all. I thought he needed to wrestle against DDP when I was watching him fight. I did think that Strickland was going to be able to just outstrike Dricus du Plessis, but Dricus du Plessis was just able to go out there and land some pretty decent shots on Strickland throughout the fight. So I was thinking, like, these rounds are close. You know, you don't know what the judges are going to do. Strickland should wrestle because that's what Dricus du Plessis is doing, to score points and steal rounds at the end of some of these rounds. And, yeah, it's just interesting that, Strickland didn't wrestle against Dricus du Plessis at all. And the fact that he didn't wrestle against Dricus du Plessis at all, and also the fact that he didn't wrestle against Alex Pereira at all, kind of tells me that Strickland's never going to wrestle. So that's kind of interesting. And another thing as well to bring up is, where is Jared Cannonier and what is he doing? Because he ain't getting a title shot next. He's 40 years old. He hasn't fought since the middle of last year. I guess he was put against Delizzi, actually. That is something. Oh, he's torn his MCL. That is something that went over my head. How did I not know that? It's unfortunate for Cannonier because he was asking for a title shot, and he's got a win over Strickland too. But and a close fight against Adesanya. Cannonier's fight versus Adesanya was boring, but it was somewhat competitive, I guess. I think Strickland beats Costa, though, at the end of the day. If Strickland really wants that belt back, he's going to go out there, he's going to beat Costa, he's going to call out DDP or Adesanya, and if Adesanya beats Dricus du Plessis, if that's genuinely what they're going to do next, I think Strickland just gets a title shot off one win. I genuinely do, because I'm sure the UFC probably wants Adesanya to get that win back. Can he get past DDP? Early pick for that fight? I think it's a good matchup for Adesanya. I think Adesanya does beat Dricus du Plessis if that fight does happen. But hey, let me know what you think in the comments below about this one. Let me know what you think about, I guess, the state of the middleweight division. I mean, what is going on right now? There's a lot going on, and there's a lot of fights that have been announced, so check out my channel for other videos. I've been making lots of videos, man, today, and I'm going to be making more, so subscribe if you haven't already, like the video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.